send the requirement or the suggestion or the idea to B. B will report to A will report to Z, then Z will report to L, to M, and then finally to N. This way, they shall be following a route of communication, which and this is called as a gangplank. And it is running from, because they are going to Z, which is a top authority. So it means that they run from top to bottom. It is not that the C will communicate directly to N. No, because we shall see what would be the disadvantages if it would happen. Now let's see what are the advantages if this scalar chain is followed. And one more thing, when this route of communication is followed, it also satisfies the principle of unity of command, and also the unity of direction is of course there, but unity of command, which is top to bottom. Now let us see what are the advantages. If this is happening, then there's a smooth flow of communication, because everybody is knowing that what is happening. Nobody is, left out, or there's no miscommunication with the top manager. Unity of command is followed, and also it avoids dual subordination. It means that N will only receive order through Z and L and M, right? Not through C. वही बात जो हमने इससे पहले की थी कि अगर N C से फॉलो करने लगेगा तो M को, L को, Z, they will not come to know that what N is doing. So there will be dual subordination, but we don't support that. हमें single subordination support कर रहे हैं हम. तो this way there will be single subordination अगर उसको order M के ही through आए. So it will happen through scalar chain. And if it is not implemented, then of course there will be multiplicity of command. There will not be unity of command. There will be lack of clarity, because N would not be knowing if he should be doing what C has ordered or what M has ordered. So there will be lack of clarity in the mind of N, and definitely there will be miscommunication. N के जो superiors होंगे, they shall not be knowing what N is doing. So there would be miscommunication. Any confusion? Anything you want to ask? Huh? Who is this?
C and N are working. Ma'am, Tausif here. Ma'am, slide change हो गई. C and N are working at the same level of managerial post now. So definitely N is going to report M. So why it is there that C will report to Z and then M and then N? It is time taking.
No. Maybe consider that they are from a different department. Okay, let's consider that they are from a different department. For example, C is from HR department and maybe N is from a marketing department. Okay, but they are at the same level.
Okay.
Maybe, right? You can think that way. Because C's head is B, okay, and B's head is A, and then A's head is Z. Okay, that is a different league. And this at this side, N is reporting to M, then M is reporting to L, and then they all are reporting to Z. So the final authority is Z. Okay, so at least final authority will come to know that what his subordinates are doing, right? And even if C and N are at the same level, he cannot order the person who is at the same level. He cannot do that. He need to follow a chain of command, right? He need to follow a chain of command, and he need to go through, he cannot, even if they are at the same level, at the same department, they cannot order each other. They need to follow this chain through which they involve everybody who is present on C's side and also on the N side. Because C भी क्या order दे रहा है N को, ये भी तो पता होना चाहिए ना B और A को, कि भाई C क्या करना चाह रहा है. The person C cannot start doing anything out of the blue. He needs to take permission from B. He needs to take permission from A. उन सबको भी तो उस चीज को ओके करना होगा, तभी वो चीज फिर उनके भी जो N के भी जो हायर अथॉरिटी है वो भी उसको ओके करे, तभी उनका सबऑर्डिनेट वो काम करेगा, है ना?
ओके मैम, गॉट इट।
हाँ, और फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर N को कोई काम M दे रहा है, M के थ्रू आ रहा है, सो M डुप्लीकेशन ऑफ वर्क नहीं करेगा, है ना? There shall not be duplication of work. For example, M knows how much workload N has, so all that will help in the better work, better effort, efficiency of N, है ना? अगर वो और चैनल से ऑर्डर्स लेगा तो M will not come to know, or there could be duplication of work, there could be duplication of efforts, or N will end up having more work than maybe which he can do, right?
Ma'am?
Yes?
Is the structure in the corporate rigid, or do we have benefit of doubt too?
In general, like I mentioned, every organization have a different structure. For example, in government organizations, the structure is rigid. They have very well-defined structure, well-defined levels. But in private organizations, for example, if you study Google, if you study Apple, they have very flexible structure. There's they all sit together. Even the CEO is sitting with marketing head. For example, if you read about Steve Jobs, he used to meet all his for example, he used to meet marketing head, HR head, everybody once a week, and they used to tell what they are doing. But he didn't used to give command to anybody. He used to leave them on their own and come out with the best. So, or jo marketing head the, they used to do what they had the right to follow their instincts and maybe take decisions. But हर organization में ये नहीं होता है, right? So the structure of organizations differ from organization to organization, depending upon what work they are doing, how much innovative they are, how much they are allowing their employees to take decisions in that light.
Okay, right? Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. The 10th principle is, let's finish it fast. Order. Order, of course, when we say that there should be order, for example, if we put books on table, we put it in order. So we say that order can be defined as a place for everything and everything in place. That way order could be defined. It could be for material, it could be for men. In material, we can say that there must be a place appointed for each thing, and each thing must be in its appointed place, at appropriate place. That way we can say that there is order in the in material orders there. And the place should also be well chosen, that which place is more suitable for a particular material to be stored. The object of order is when I say that the place should also be chosen which is best suitable for the material. It is in the light that the material may not be lost, right? And the objective to be the objective which is there to be completed could be realized. So that the place which is to be arranged for the objects to be placed should be very well decided, should be well chosen, which could facilitate all the activities as much as possible. If this is not fulfilled, then we can see that material is lying here and there in like not in order, and the appearance of the material stored will be not orderly. It will be very much visible. Same way, there is a social order, that there should be a place for everyone who is appointed. Appointed place for every employee should be there, and every employee should be in his appointed place. Is it okay? जो आपके एम्प्लॉय हैं उनके लिए भी वो भी अपॉइंट होने चाहिए एक प्लेस के लिए, जो भी उनका काम है, और वो सब अपनी प्लेस पे ही होने चाहिए जब वो अपॉइंट हो जाए, ताकि वो अपना काम एक ऑर्डर में कर सकें. It reduces time wastage because people know where, for example, if we have a chamber to sit in the department, we know that okay, we have to sit there, where we are not wasting our time in finding a place to sit. For example, if you appear an exam, you already have a roll number placed on your table, so you know where you have to be placed. So it is not creating a chaos. It is not wasting your time. No obstacle in smooth running of operations because people know where the object is placed, where the people are. If they need to meet the people, they can go and meet the people at their place. So the right man in the right place, and also suitable, and also not in light of the place in the office, but also what work they have to do, right? So the person should be appointed for a particular job, for a particular place, and he should be at that place only, so that he knows that how to run those operations, how to smooth run those operations. It will definitely increase their efficiency, productivity, because everybody knows what they have to do. Why are they appointed? What work has been assigned to them? If not implemented, there will be wastage of time because people would not know what they are supposed to do, from where the material is to be procured, and there would be unnecessary efforts which would also make them tiresome. All right. Equity, again, very simple. Equity, you need to share your profit, or you need to share your equity with employees. Fayol says so. And he emphasizes on kindliness, and that we should be kind, we should be just towards workers, because it would bring loyalty and devotion from the workers. Now, these are the advantages if we are sharing our profit. Since the time is less, I am not able to go in much detail, but when I share the article, if you like to read, you can read it in detail. It brings loyalty from the employees. It brings cordial relationship between managers and workers. It builds a congenial atmosphere, healthy atmosphere, such atmosphere where they can produce more, they can work more effectively. And if it is not implemented, there are poor relations among workers and managers, because workers would feel that they are not being treated in a just way. Their managers are not kind, and that will lead to dissatisfaction among workers. If they think that their profit is not being shared with the employee, or like bonuses is not given to them, or they are not being treated in a desired or equal manner, equality of treatment is not there, so that would lead to the dissatisfaction among the employees. You are with me? Are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, just two, three more slides. So just bear with me. The 12th principle of management. Yes, the next principle of management is stability of tenure of personnel. It means that for the purpose for which we have hired the employee, there should be stability in that tenure. We should be appointing the employee for at least a fixed tenure. He should not be, for example, hired today and should be, fired after few months only. We should be hiring him for a fixed tenure. There should be stability in the time period of his stay in the company, in the organization, because it helps in minimizing employee turnover. Because, for example, he has a tenure of 3 years. So we know that, okay, for 3 years he is here. And in 3 years, if he is able to work good, he is satisfied, he will stay. Also, when we are selecting personnel, you will be discussing this in more detail in HR. When we are selecting personnel, it should be through a very rigorous procedure, so that we may know which person is more suitable for a particular job, so that we don't end up hiring an unsuitable person for a particular job. Maybe somebody is good in computers and we have hired him for paperwork, so we should know which person is best suited for which work, and accordingly we should be recruiting the person, should be selecting the employee. Once selected, should be kept for a fixed tenure. That is what this means, stability of tenure. So he should be kept for a fixed tenure. Now, what are the advantages of this? It shall bring job security, because a person will feel that, okay, my job is secure. I'm here for at least 3 years, 5 years, my job is secured. And once he would be used to that, he might not think of leaving the organization later until he has a better opportunity. At least he will not have this in mind every day that, okay, I can leave the organization. He will be stable. His mind will stay stable too. That will increase motivation, because he would be able to perform more, maybe for promotion after that fixed tenure. That will definitely reduce employee turnover and recruitment expense, because for that fixed amount of time, he would not be leaving the organization. And the expense which is incurred by the organization, the recruitment, shall be saved. If it is not implemented, then the employee turnover will increase, of course, and the company will again and again spending on the recruitment and the selection process of the employees, and the person's job security will be at stake. He would be thinking that he could be sent back home anytime. So there should be stability of tenure of the employee. Initiative, 2 more principles are left. One is this, initiative. See, initiative is the power of thinking and executing. For example, when a person, thinking out a plan and ensuring its success is one of the something which gives a lot of satisfaction to an intelligent person. For example, if I am able to think out a plan, if I am able to ensure that it is successfully executed, then it would be giving me satisfaction and motivation. And it acts as a stimulus. A stimulus means something which is motivating you for further work. So the power of thinking out and executing that plan is your initiative. Managers should encourage workers. We should encourage, for example, we encourage you to come with your ideas for the entrepreneurial committee, for some entrepreneurship ideas. So we are encouraging you to develop some ideas and carry out that plans. Similarly, managers should encourage workers to develop and carry out plans for improvement in the organization. There should be integrity. There should be a kind of coordination, oneness, which is required to inspire that person's initiative, that we all are with you, support should be there. Now, how it is advantageous? Employees feel motivated. Of course, when they are given the responsibility, when they think that they are in charge of something, it is there, when they have the ownership of any plan and executing that plan, their efficiency increases. And the effectiveness, it is more successful. They are able to do it more successfully. And of course, they bring out improvements. They can bring out improvements in operations. They can bring improvements in supply chain, how the things can be improved, how cost can be cut. Such improvements could be brought. If it is not implemented, there is this frustration and dissatisfaction. How? Can anybody tell me how frustration, dissatisfaction would be there if this initiative is not implemented?
Ma'am, employees might feel that their voices or their opinions are not heard.
Correct. Right. because they think that maybe they are capable of advising something, they are capable of developing any plan, and they are able to move ahead, but they are not supported by the manager. So it will create frustration and dissatisfaction among employees, and finally turnover ho jayega. They will leave the job, they would go somewhere where they will be more valued, their ideas will be more valued. So initiative should be implemented, and of course there will be no motivation. They will not towards improvement. They would not be motivated to improve operation, the process of the whole maybe their marketing procedure, the HR. They would not be motivated to improve any of those. The final principle of management is esprit de corps. Anybody know the esprit de corps meaning?
Ma'am, the spirit of the organization should be present amongst everyone.
The spirit of the organization, right? So there should be a spirit in the organization, and that spirit comes when there is a unity among the employees, among the workers, among the managers. Unity towards achieving the objectives of the organization, towards achieving the organizational goals, and of course in that they align that with their personal goals also. So this principle says unity is strength. Union is a strength. That is the strength which they have if they are united, and they can achieve all the goals if they are united. Employees should not be split up. They should not be scattered. They should be united. For example, whenever we talk of our achievement, we often use I, but this I needs to be replaced with we. We have done it. For example, when you see the cricket captains talking, or the captain of any sports team talking, usually they say we, because they use it in a team spirit. So that is required to be done. We. Employee should consider himself as a part of the team, right? And abuse of written communication. It means that sometimes written communication is okay, but many a times when we are dealing with any business matter or we are giving any order, it requires explanation to complete it, right? So usually it is simpler and quicker to do so verbally than in writing, because when it is complicated, when it is a neat explanation and it is done face to face, it is more effective, and you are able to bring clarity among your teammates faster than you sending all the written matter, because there is no face contact, and face contact is better. So it is advised that you can have numerous points of contact with employees to maintain communication, and or even employees can be communicated in writing, but if you could easily meet, it is advised. You should do that. You should have more meetings with them. Now, what are the advantages? It develops a feeling of trust and belongingness, because when they are united, they feel that you can trust the other person, you can share your ideas. Otherwise, what happens these days, when you are not feeling when there is no trust, you don't share your ideas with your friends even. And belongingness, that you feel that you are belonging to the company, to the organization, and that of course leads to achievement of goals, because there is unity among each other. They may not be challenging each other. And of course, if it is not implemented, there shall be lack of coordination, and there would be conflicts. People would not be able to achieve goals effectively, because there would not be unity. So this is what I had to discuss about these 14 principles of proposed by Fayol. I hope I was able to explain. And if there's any confusion you have, you can always write to me. You can always leave a message to me, and we can discuss over there. Okay. And now, can we have the recap for the previous class?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, Mukul.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Mukul Sharma. Here I am presenting the recap of our previous session. As we have discussed that Taylor was a man with a mission, but Taylor's scientific management is a principle of its time. When the time changed, disadvantage or limitation of that principle become clearly seen. So scientific management was relevant only when the markets are expanding, but during the recession, when market shrinks, hence its applications are limited. For example, during World War I, when people are struggling for the meals as well as their basic needs, they were unable to buy the automobiles. But Ford Motor is full of cars, hence TSM lost their relevance as production was not needed at that time. When we expand the certain idea too heavily, it is the poor engineering that if we are using the hands of the worker but not their minds, the workers will lose their interest. They do the same kind of work again and again. And next, the man's specific contribution is always to integrate, to balance, and to measure and to judge. Next, we have discussed about it is unnecessary to creating a division between doing and planning. We had taken an example of the universities deciding their syllabus or curriculum. Some university decides their curriculum or syllabus with the consultancy of their professor who will teach the subject. And some universities decide their curriculums and syllabus without a consultancy of the professor who will teach. So that's all about the previous session. Thank you.
Ma'am left the meeting.
Is the class over?
अरे भाई
मैम आपका कनेक्शन प्रॉपर नहीं है, लग रहा है थोड़ा आवाज भी कट कट के आ रही है आपकी.
Okay. Yes, you are. Yes, you are audible, but okay, Tala.
Should I start?
There is. I think so too, Lalit. Thank you. Tala, please. Okay, Tala. Please carry on before I lose my connection. Let's finish it.
Good morning, everyone.
क्योंकि मेरी लाइट चली गई तो मेरा लैपटॉप बंद हो गया. मैं अभी फोन से हुई हूँ कनेक्ट. सो लेट्स फिनिश इट. आप करिए प्रेजेंट.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Talha Jamal Khan, and today I'll be providing you with a recap of our last class. We started our last class by appreciating Taylor's contribution to scientific management. We all agreed that when there's a need for a process-based work and there's a series of steps that need to be taken for doing the job, Taylor's scientific management insights will always come in handy. Having said that, we realize that each theory is a product of its times, and when times undergo change, the theory becomes not so relevant. Scientific management was evolved keeping expanding markets in view. The primary focus was on production, as there were always enough people to buy what was being produced. Taylor's scientific management lost its relevance with the onset of World War I. The war was followed by recession, and as the need for mass production fell, the scientific management became not so relevant. But this wasn't the only limitation to Taylor's scientific management approach. To shed further light on this statement, we narrated the story of IBM computers. Mr. Johnson, who was the founder of IBM, was once on a factory visit. He came across a lady who was simply sitting in front of a machine. When asked as to why she was sitting in front of a machine idle, the lady replied that she was waiting for this setup man to arrive. When Mr. Johnson asked her whether she could fix the machine on her own or not, the lady replied that she certainly could, but felt it was not her job to do the same. Mr. Johnson asked her to proceed with the same, and she was able to do the job. Another example from IBM was the design of advanced calculating machines. Due to increasing pressure to supply from the market, the management decided to proceed with the semi-finished design by the R&D team, and a decision was made that the design will be completed on the shop floor. The final design was beyond what R&D team could ever achieve. In the first example, the lady thought that she shouldn't intrude into someone else's work. In the second example, the design of the calculating machine came out beyond what was deemed possible due to the workers' involvement. Taylor's scientific management approach has always told us that management will think and the workers will do. A cotton mill worker whose job is to replace a broken thread may be efficient in his work, but he may not feel the same sense of accomplishment or a sense of belonging. We realize that Taylor's scientific management approach loses the larger picture. That is, human beings perform individual motions poorly, especially when they are made to do the same repetitively. When we hire hands, it would be poor engineering of us if we end up using just the hands of the person and not his mind. Workers lose interest in the work when it becomes monotonous. People always want a meaning out of their work. Scientific management, or for that matter, any approach, is a product of its times, and their limitations become evident when the context changes. To conclude, I'd like to say that the idea of scientific management is based on the view that human beings are economic entities, whereas man's specific contribution is always to integrate, to balance, to measure, to judge, and as Sir rightly put it, to improvise. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.